Something that I feel not enough people considered is the local level political ramifications of the electoral challenges and the presidential race. A lot of people look at everything that's happening and they think, well, it's only about the presidency and the negative consequences will only pertain to the presidency, be it a Biden supporter or a Trump supporter. Donald Trump is filing legal challenges. He has a lot of people in various states that are making claims and defending him, and a lot that are attacking and saying he's wrong. But have you considered what will happen in local races? We've got two really interesting stories. The first is from the Wisconsin State Legislature, Assembly Resolution 3. Now, many conservatives, I see Trump supporters, claiming that this is Wisconsin's effort to decertify the results, meaning Biden will not have won Wisconsin. It wouldn't be enough on its own to change a whole lot. You'd need several states in order for Trump to get the electoral vote, the electoral count tomorrow. I can't believe it's tomorrow. But what this bill seems to be, to me, is a precursor. I don't necessarily know if this is going to have any impact, but it is an assembly resolution it is introduced right now that lays out a bunch of the problems, the constitutional issues where in Wisconsin, the law was violated as it pertained to the election rules. And the state legislature controls this. This is important because the lawsuits many of the lawsuits that have been filed, notably the Texas suit, argued that these key swing states violated the electors clause of the Constitution by changing election rules without the approval of the state legislatures. That's what this bill seems to do. I don't know if it goes anywhere after that because it's not the strongest bill I've ever seen. People are saying it'll decertify. Well, it says they want to redress, the issue. And here's the integrity being called into question because of these violations of law. What it could do is show the intent of the state legislatures to certify a different slate of electors. The only problem? Well, look, as many conservatives are saying this would decertify, it's not certifying a different slate of electors. I don't know if this will be enough, but it does show at the local level within the states, there are going to be some ramifications. The most dramatic, however, I believe, is actually this. PA State Senator Jim Brewster swearing in to be delayed due to fight over mail-in ballots. State Senate Democrats said on Monday, the Republican majority will not let Brewster take his seat for a fourth term. What? Whoa. This is getting weird. And there you go. This, I think, is the unintended consequences, the massive impact. And when I tell people, I'm warning you that things are getting crazy and that, we're headed towards some kind of crazy conflict, whatever you want to call it. What happens when at the state level, these states are getting torn apart? The Republicans control the state legislatures in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and many other states. Well, they can determine whether or not this man takes his seat, whether or not they listen to him or allow him in. The Democrats can complain all they want, but they aren't in the majority here. Because the Republicans are saying, we want these issues addressed, and the Democrats are saying, no, we're going to run out the clock. Republicans are saying, then we won't let Democrats come in. I don't know if it ultimately matters in the end, but protesters are showing up demanding that the results in Pennsylvania be decertified. The reason I think this is the important story to lead off with today is that the protests have begun. Right now, people are already in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump has come out. He had a rally. He said Mike Pence better come through for us. Otherwise, he's not going to like him all that much. A lot of people think Mike Pence has more power than he really does. Now, as I've mentioned before, the hypotheticals. This is why I want to bring up the Wisconsin legislature. We'll go back. I want to read you what Wisconsin's Assembly bill resolution says. The reason I bring this up, if Mike Pence is given 2 envelopes certified, then you've got a problem. Some people argue he chooses which ones to read. Some people argue he can't read either. He can't count either votes from the envelopes. Some argue that he would just choose to not count either or one or the other, whatever. The problem is these alternate elector slates that have been, cast procedural votes for Trump, they're not certified by anyone. This is why I'm telling you, I think it is 99.99% Joe Biden's going to be certified and inaugurated. Now, there's the lottery tickets chance it doesn't happen. I get it. It's within the realm of possibility. But listen, We have this Wisconsin state legislature resolution, and it doesn't do enough. Oh, sure, it points out, violations of law, but will it put an official stamp on an envelope by tomorrow? No. The real ramifications are going to be that at the state level, people are going to hate each other and tear each other apart. That's the issue. Think about it this way. You have the fight at the national level. You have the fight on the ground with Proud Boys, Antifa, conservatives, left-wingers, whatever. The physical fights, the political fights, and now it's rippling through everything in between. What happens when Republicans in certain states are like, you do not represent the people? And then they start fighting each other. And then they start challenging each other. We're already seeing electoral challenges in some congressional races where things are getting insane. Even Democrats suing Republicans. You know what I think we're seeing is people like to self-isolate. They like to find communities. I'll put it that way. It's a better way to explain it. So I'll give you an example. When I went to Sweden, I think this was in 2017, we found that Somali refugees were moving to areas with other Somali refugees. Why? It was easier. They spoke the language. They wanted to be closer to people they were familiar with. And what that created is disparate cultures where the people who lived in these, growing Somali communities didn't feel that the Swedish government represented them or the Swedish people did. It was a different group of people with different customs, different language, different food. And so it didn't quite mesh properly. What I think we're seeing in the U.S. is something similar. I'm looking at buying crazy, farmland out in the middle of West Virginia so that we can shoot videos and just have fun and get away from everything. So the liberty-minded people are moving away from cities, and the people who don't care about freedom and don't mind being locked in a cubicle or aren't smart enough to escape are just accepting Democrat rule. You see, it's the polarization of the communities, of the ideologies. And now what ends up happening is we're at a point where the Democrats are so insanely different from Republicans that Republicans and Democrats refuse to accept each other. Now, personally, I disagree with a lot of Republican policies, but I think the Democrats have become overwhelmingly authoritarian wingnuts. I mean, you got Lauren Boebert, who's now in Congress, Republican. She wants to carry her concealed Glock on Capitol Hill. And the left, even these people claiming to be like democratic socialists who should be pro-gun aren't. And they're mocking her and making fun of her. And that's the craziest thing to me. I'm like, shouldn't you be anti-fascist? Isn't the best thing to be like opposed to authoritarianism is to allow individuals the ability to bear arms? They don't, because the left has become overwhelmingly authoritarian. Bend the knee, do as you're told. But I don't want to rant too much. Let me show you what's going on with this assembly resolution. They say, this is from Representative Allen. Now, this is introduced, not even voted on. That means they have to get it done today. And it still won't even certify, the legislator will not have certified the state's, their Trump slate. So I don't know if this matters. They say we have three branches of government. The legislative branch, consisting only of duly elected representatives of the people, is the branch charged with the power to write the laws. It is through this process that our government maintains legitimacy. They say, when the executive branch or administrative agencies charged with enforcing the laws instead choose to step outside the law or go beyond the law or stretch the law to something other than what is written, the legitimacy of the government begins to erode. And whereas the 2020 election and the recount of the results of the presidential election have brought to light a number of areas in which the letter of the law is not being followed, those circumstances of departure from the letter of the law include, but aren't limited to, 1, clerks provided absentee ballots to electors without applications as required by law. Clerks and deputy clerks authorized by the municipal clerk failed to write on the official ballot in the space for official endorsement the clerk's initials and official title required by law. Let me tell you why that's important. If you didn't request the absentee ballot, why'd you get one? Who voted? If the clerk doesn't initial on the ballot the space for official endorsement, how do you know where the ballot came from and who handled it? That's chain of custody. That's basic security. The clerk issued absentee ballots to electors who were required to enclose a copy of proof of ID or an authorized substitute document, but who failed to do so. Clerks failed to enter initials on ballot envelopes, indicating whether the elector is exempt from providing proof of ID as required by Wisconsin law. Clerks in Milwaukee and Dane counties declared electors in their counties to be indefinitely confined under Wisconsin law, causing chaos and confusion, and failed to keep current the mailing list established under the subsection. More than 215,000 electors, thus avoided identification requirements and safeguards that the legislature has established. Clerks and the Board of Canvassers permitted absentee ballots returned without required witness address under Wisconsin law. Clerks who received absentee ballots with improperly completed certificates or no certificates filled in missing information in contravention of Wisconsin law. They say the Wisconsin Elections Commission, in contravention of Wisconsin law, barred special voting deputies from entering qualified nursing homes and assisted living facilities, instead mailing ballots to residents directly, thereby avoiding safeguards the legislature put in place to protect our most vulnerable citizens and loved ones. The clerk of the city of Madison ignored the law and created an event named Democracy in the Park, and of her own accord designated alternate sites where absentee ballots could be collected. These ballots were counted in contravention of the law. Whereas, without legitimacy, the government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not stand. Instead, our government will devolve into a system of coercion and bribery that seeks to use guise of elections to hold a degree of credibility. And whereas the people of Wisconsin are demanding that the legislature address questions of legitimacy now, therefore be it resolved by the Assembly that the Wisconsin State Assembly recognizes that the most important function for a government is to conduct fair and honest elections that follow the duly enacted law, and be it further resolved that when there are significant portions of the population that question the integrity of the elections due to failure of elections officials to follow the letter of the law, it is incumbent upon the legislature to address the issues that are in question, and be it further resolved that the members of the Wisconsin State Assembly place the redress to these and other election law violations and failed administrative procedures at its highest priority, and shall take up legislation crafted to ensure civil officers follow the laws as written. What they're basically saying, and they've laid out, which could be very beneficial to lawsuits, is that here is exactly where we, the state legislature, have stated the law has been violated and why. This could mean a constitutional challenge to the election could take place, citing the actual statements from the Wisconsin state legislature. Now, I think the issue, we probably need to see Wisconsin state legislature, Pennsylvania and Georgia, maybe Arizona, filing lawsuits challenging the certification of the electoral vote count from the governors. The governor certified. Now, they're not doing that. Texas did. Why aren't we seeing Wisconsin state legislature actually file? Because I don't think they're actually going to do anything. A lot of people are like, this is it, Wisconsin, they're making moves. No, they're not. They've laid out much of what we've already known, which could help. But the vote count is tomorrow. You think anything's going to get done? I don't. What I think we're seeing is many Republicans, many established Republicans, just trying to placate Trump supporters. And Trump supporters are buying into it. I'm sorry, man. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just one day before they're going to count the votes to certify Biden's win. They give us this, it's introduced, not even voted on. Maybe they'll vote on it. Introduced on the 4th. Maybe they'll vote on it. Maybe. Now, I'll tell you this. In Wisconsin, you've got in the Senate, it is 17 Republicans to 13 Democrats. So they got the majority there. In the state assembly, it's 62 Republicans to 34 Democrats. So they definitely have the majority there. I believe there are 3 vacancies in each house in Wisconsin. If they vote, it will likely pass. It's a resolution. What does that really mean? Well, they've made the statement. Theoretically, someone could sue saying, see, look, but the problem is still going to be the same. No standing. They're going to say, why are you suing? Why aren't they suing? I'll tell you what I see. Wisconsin seems to be trying to just say, we're going to take care of this in the future. Seems like they pulled a fast one in many states to stop Trump from winning re-election. And now they're like, okay, now we're going to make sure everything goes back to normal. Well, here's where things get crazy. Pennsylvania, they're in a dispute over mail-in ballots. So they're not going to seat the Democrat. This is where it gets weird. Let me read. From Pittsburgh, CBS, they say, Pennsylvania Senate Republicans today will refuse to seat Democrat Jim Brewster at a swearing-in ceremony. This comes with some harsh words from the Democrats. They're saying the Republican majority is trying to steal an election and are abusing the process. All of this revolves around the election of Democratic Senator Jim Brewster and Republican challenger Nicole Ziccarelli. Brewster beat Ziccarelli by 69 votes in the November 3rd election, according to state certified returns last month. Today is when state lawmakers are supposed to be sworn in for a new 2-year session. State Senate Democrats said on Monday that the Republican majority will not let Brewster take his seat for a 4th term. Senate Minority Leader Jay called the Republicans' refusal to swear in Brewster today unlawful. We cannot allow a process within the Senate to usurp the court's authority to be able to look at this matter and resolve this matter. We're opening Pandora's box on this matter. The contest between Brewster and Ziccarelli came down to court decisions, which said mail-in ballots that lack a handwritten date on the ballot envelope is not a reason to disqualify someone. More recently on Friday, Ziccarelli filed a complaint with the Senate. Now we're seeing in, I believe it's in Iowa, you had the Democrat lose by like 6 votes and then requested to Pelosi not to seat the Republican because of court challenges. I believe the Pelosi rejected that. I'm not 100%. But this is the local ramifications. I think we're headed towards absolute bedlam and chaos, man. You know, I've been saying it for some time. And let me just make some things clear, right? So we did a podcast episode last night on the IRL podcast. If you haven't already, go to youtube.com/TimCastIRL. It's my podcast show. We do it live every night, Monday through Friday. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, check it out. You'll love the show. But, you know, we have some people on, and whenever I bring people over to the studio, yes, we follow all COVID guidelines. We do not exceed any of these, numbers, and we have hand sanitizer and all the good stuff. And we're all sitting more than 6 feet apart from each other. But when we have people over, they see that I've set up this house. It's effectively a production facility, and that we're getting this property in West Virginia. And they say to me, "Do you really think it's going down?" Things like that. They're like, you're doing pitches for this emergency food supply, and like, do you really think the end is nigh? I'm like, dude, the sponsorship for the food stuff is just convenience, for people. When I promote it, I just tell people it's not about the world ending. It's about sometimes the roads get closed and there's floods. You know what I mean? So have some food that lasts. Have some water. Have a first aid kit. And there's very few sponsors that would ever take. But let me tell you something. As I become a gun owner, and now I'm going to be trying to get this property in West Virginia, let me tell you something. Do you think that there's going to be some kind of breakdown or collapse or chaos? All right, that's what I get asked, because a lot of people have a normalcy bias. It can't happen here, they say. Look at what's happening at the local level. Now, Wisconsin, I'm not entirely convinced what's going on there is going to have an impact. We'll see. I mean, they're saying, look, you broke the law. Maybe it'll have an impact. They're not going to seat a Democrat. These fights are happening all over the place. People are refusing to back down. But let me tell you something more important. Did you know that 66% of the money supply, the current M1 money stock in this country, was created in the last 9 months? Probably less than that, actually. I'm not exaggerating. Google M1 money stock, Federal Reserve, and look at the charts yourself. It just goes up and then spikes straight up. Has that ever happened before? Has that happened? So when people see that the money supply we're just pumping money out like crazy and producing nothing. Right now, the federal debt to GDP is 130.47%. In the 80s, it was like 54. So, we're collapsing. That is what that means. It is falling apart. So when people say, do you think it's going to go down or something's going to happen? I'm like, I don't know, man. I'll just ask you some questions. Has any of this ever happened before? What we're seeing now at the local level in politics, what we're seeing with fights in the streets, what we're seeing with the runoffs, what we're seeing with the split, what we're seeing with Trump and the accusations of fraud, has it ever been this bad? Yeah. In fact, many people like to point to, 1860s, Civil War. It's funny that they do, but they bring up a bunch of similarities, a feckless and pathetic president in, who Buchanan. Am I getting the name wrong? Which one is it? We had a weak president, which led to the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln came in, and then Abraham Lincoln was fairly authoritarian, suspending the Constitution and people's rights and things like that. But people look back on him and they praise him as a hero for it, because sometimes crazy things happen. I wonder if they'll look back at, the Biden administration and Fauci and say shutting everything down, locking everything down was the right move. I wonder. Well, the economy's been totally destroyed. I can't say anything like this has ever happened in my lifetime. And I look back at history, and it certainly isn't the same either. I went to the grocery store the other day, and I was buying a half gallon of milk, and it was $4. And I'm like, is that a lot? because it's not, look, I don't normally buy milk. I don't drink a whole lot of milk. Used to when I was younger, but not so much now that I'm older. And I was thinking about it when I was buying it. And I asked, like, is $8 for a gallon a lot? And yeah, it is. I mean, think about it. If the average person right now in certain states is making like $10 an hour, after they pay taxes, that means I got to work an hour for just a gallon of milk. That means food is going up in price, and it is. Some of the people I was talking to about the cost of milk, I was like, because that's expensive, I can't believe it's a half gallon, and people were telling me that they've gone to the grocery store and like there's something you got to check out. See if you notice this. Depending on where you are, maybe it's different. And I had someone say that they spent like $500 on groceries. It didn't even fill up their cart, and it was like the first time, and they were thinking like, when did everything get so expensive? Like normally they go and they have their budget. They put the things in their cart and then they bring it up and it's like, for something $500. And they're like, whoa, like those are our groceries. That's a lot of money. I wonder, but I'll tell you something else. I mentioned I'm buying property in West Virginia. So we're looking at property value estimates and averages. And I'm looking at one property. It's been up for a few days. And I'm looking at the estimates on Zillow and a couple other websites. A couple of days goes by, and these properties have jumped like 13, 14% in value already. And I'm staring at the screen like, what is going on? The property value is skyrocketing. And as was explained to me, is the rich people are fleeing. And so the demand is so high for property outside of cities that the prices just keep going up and up and up and up and up. And that's going to affect taxes. That's going to affect rent. That's going to affect people who can, the working class, the cost of food, and everything. When property value gets assessed really high and you owe more in taxes, and then in order to pay those taxes, the landlords who own the property are going to start charging more in rent, then the people who live there are going to go to their jobs and say, my rent is going up. Once my lease, my lease is a new assessment, a new year, a new lease, rent is way higher. I need more money. Then wages are going to go up. The base wages go up. Food starts going up. And then when I start looking at that milk at $4 for a half gallon, it's going to be $10 for a half gallon. It's going to be $20. This is where I think things start getting crazy. But I don't know, man. I'm not a psychic. I'm just some dude who complains on the internet. And I love it. I love how the left tries to put me on a pedestal for some reason. I guess because they have to. But all I've ever viewed myself as is somebody who reads the news. I'll pull up documents. I'll ask for comments and things like that. Call it journalism, whatever you want. And I just want to understand what's going on and talk about how I feel about things and what I think about things. And I'll tell you, I've not been confident in the system at all. When you see the money supply increasing by trillions of dollars to now $6.6 trillion from $4 trillion just not even a year ago, and not to mention the national debt, the borrowing of money, the debt owed at $27 trillion, with the GDP, the debt to GDP at 130%. I got to say, I'm not confident that we're pulling out of this tailspin. The dollar, according to CNBC, is in a downward decline. Bitcoin is skyrocketing. So here's what I tell you. Look for the people in the know, the connected, wealthy elites, the people who know people in government, the people who know the major, people at major corporations or who work there. And what are they doing? They're buying up property like crazy outside of cities. They're buying assets like Bitcoin. They're getting away from the dollar. And that says to me, I think things are going to get freaky. Protest starts today in Georgia. Trump supporters are already there. Not all of them, but many of them. The protest is today and it's soon. I wonder, how many Trump supporters left Georgia yesterday to make it to D.C. for today and will not be voting? Now, a lot of people have said, Tim, they vote by mail. Well, hold on. Republicans don't. Republicans overwhelmingly vote in person. Democrats vote by mail. The advantage is for the Democrats. What'll happen if today they announce that the Democrats win the runoff? And tomorrow, you have a bunch of Republicans and Trump supporters angry, standing in D.C., realizing the Democrats will now control every branch of government, assuming they pack the Supreme Court. Trump supporters have already started calling for each other to bring weapons into D.C. in violation of D.C. law. But they cite the Constitution. But D.C. has a law banning weapons from being carried. So people are saying they're going to defy the law. I think things are going to get spicy, get crazy. But I could be wrong. You know, Trump supporters aren't the violent bunch. They might go around, wave their little American flags and go home. We'll see how things play out. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.